So in the Maimer Nasa.
Rabbi, how are you feeling? How are you feeling, by the way?
Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. I'm online now, so let's get to
Okay.
the Maimer. Nasa no Aliyas Yaktana is the Maimer. We're on page 133. So we spoke about. We'll just repeat what we began learning last week, but we'll do it quickly because we learned a little bit about the Nefesh Habamis. So it's the new chapter, paragraph of 133. V'hinei Nefesh Habamis Hagam Kishmoi Kein Hu Shu Bahami. Although it is true that it is an animal, v'tivi, and natural, v'kori midis, and primarily it functions and operates emotionally. Av mikol mokim, nevertheless, it also has a great advantage. And its advantage is mashu oluli spoil, the fact that it is ripe and ready to be emotional, to be moved, to act with emotions. The tevo haluliously spoil this nature of being emotional and being ready for an emotional experience. Humayla gedola, it is a great advantage. We're on 133. Yonason, we just began the chapter again. We're on third line. As we see, but in actuality, by people with their nature, the there are people that are always apathetic and cold and aren't impacted, aren't moved. And it's not because of their mind, their intelligence that's preventing them from being emotional. Rather, that's their nature. The hein emes, true. The chlolus that the general difference between intellect and emotions is the seichel humasinas the visyashvus. That seichel, that intellect, is calm and settling. Umidas and emotions, hemisrakshus vispailus, are, what's the word you used again, Yonason, last time? What? Excitement. Umidas hemisrakshus vispailus are excitement and emotions. Hiniamasinas visyashvus, the calmness and the settlement. Eina inyan akridus is not tantamount, it's not equivalent, it's not the same idea as apathy, as coldness. Therefore, the overall idea of apathy, it's not because the mind dictates be cold. This is the person's nature, and this is his habit, to be not excited. We spoke a lot about this last time, so I'm not going to repeat it. And the Rebbe says, generally speaking, usually, why is the person this way? It's because of the person's ego and self-love. There's someone else whose nature is to be warm. And this person is excited and emotional easily, and becomes emotional easily. As expressed in the colloquialism that people use in Yiddish, a hitziger Mensch, a hot-blooded person, and whatever he does, this type of person, he does it with excitement.
I love the Yiddish term.
Yeah, me too. Nit ausgerechnet, he doesn't calculate. And usually these type of people, they do things that's way beyond their ability. And I gave you some examples in last year. So from all this we see that generally speaking, usually such people, the Rebbe says, are more apt to do things of good midos than things that are no good. And the proof is the when a hot-blooded person does something that's no good, a few minutes later he has regret. Why did I do that? The kasher is a davar toiv. But when a hot-blooded person does something that's good, he gives too much tzedakah. He gives a lot of tzedakah. Or Gemilas Chasadim, he gives he loans someone a money chesed, or he does something but helps a person. Or he exerts himself very much for someone else. Bishvil, top of the next page, 134. Bishvil Taivel Chaveirei, for he does it to help another person. Hagam shehich bedolav b'yoser, although it's very difficult for him to do this. Nevertheless, he has no regrets whatsoever.
Count the fish.
Yeah. And sometimes he has tainuk, Abram. He has pleasure that he worked so hard for someone else. He got nothing from it, but he did it for someone else. And the Rebbe quotes here another worldly saying in Yiddish: "Wenn nit von Hitz wollt, sich die Sach nicht abgetan." It's a beautiful expression, which means, if not for heat, the thing would have never been accomplished. And I've seen this so many times in my life. There are things, if you start thinking and calculating, they would never get done. There's so many reasons why not to do it. But sometimes you get so excited, so emotionally, you jump and you do it, and it gets done, and you never look back. One thing that stands out, when I was, when I had the Chabad house in Marin County, and we had great opposition from the neighbors to establish a shul in an area where there were no buildings, no religious buildings, and there was a residential area. And everyone, including my own balabatim, own congregants, basically said, just be in your rented, little office, and we'll have our minion there. And I said, you got to be kidding! The Rebbe sent me to Marin County to sit in a little office. No, we're gonna purchase a building, and we're going to get it's legal in America. And if it means we have to fight the system, we're gonna fight the system, and we'll show the system supports us. And that's what we did. And so in talking to one of my congregants, like 10, 15 years later, he said to me, Rabbi, in looking back, if you would have not done that, we would still be in our little office. He said, at the time, we gave you a hard time. That's what he said to me. I said, I know, and I'm not upset. That's the game plan. You got to give me a hard time, and I have to do what I have to do. And now, 15 years later, you look back, and Baruch Hashem, there's a shul with a mikveh and everything because of what we did, acting with hits, with excitement and emotions, and feeling the Rebbe wants, and the Eibishter wants, that there should be a large, noticeable presence of Yiddishkeit, of Orthodoxy, of Chassidus, of Chabad in this area. If I would have gone about it in a calculated way, we would still be in the little office. That's what the Rebbe is saying right here, exactly right here. And the same is true in our lives. Yes, Yoini.
So, Rebbe, what you just said now reminded me of a story before these crazy times. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was on my way back from Uman. I was in the Kiev airport, and there was this guy who was, he didn't even look Jewish, but he was Jewish. He was wearing a baseball cap.
Yeah.
And we went over there was a bunch of people, a bunch of Hasidim, that they weren't standing on line to go onto the plane. They were like just sitting around. And he said, what are you guys sitting around? We're going onto the plane. He said, we can't go on. We don't have money. He said, what do you mean we don't have money? It's like, we're 12 guys. We're hoping, we'll get from Shemayim money and we'll be able to fly back to Israel, or else we're stuck here at the airport. This guy took out a wad of cash and said, how much do you need? And gave each person a few $100s to get on the plane.
Wow.
And you say the hits. It was mamish in the hits. You could tell that a spark, something in him. I don't know how firm he is, whatever, but that sparked him.
That's right. Exactly. That's exactly another example. Thank you for sharing. Let's continue inside. I just want to say one more thing, and the same is true with tshuva. Today, we're experiencing, some people are saying, they're thinking, did I make the right choice in becoming about the tshuva, and becoming frum, becoming religious? I'm telling you, that comes from the no good side. That comes from the Yetzer Hara. That's bad. It's bad energy, and it's stupid and ridiculous. Of course you made the right choice. There are issues, and there wouldn't be issues if you weren't religious. So we have to really don't give any room for that type of thinking today. Everyone made the right choice, and the fact that there's issues, believe me, FFBs from the greatest and biggest families have plenty of issues. And if you want, I can give you a list of them, okay? So, don't tell me that because the Bali Tshuva families and some of the kids become not religious, and they say, well, if mom and dad, Abba and Ima, you guys weren't religious and you went to parties and you took drugs and you did this, whatever you guys did, whatever people did, why can't I do the same thing? So then the parents might think, hey, Bazoi, what do I need the whole thing? What do I need the whole thing? The answer is a big mistake. The big mistake. Tshuva's emes. Tshuva's emes. The fact that there are issues, there are issues. We'll deal with the issues. But don't have any regrets whatsoever. And this has to be spoken about today, because I'm telling you, right in your background about Shemesh, some people think this way. Right here in Borough Park, some people think this way. This is a new machla, a very bad machla that's crept into our community, where people, because there are issues, they say that they were wrong in their choice. It's not true. They were right in their choice. The fact there's still baggage that hasn't been refined and worked on and needs more work. Okay, who could say whether you're born from or not born from that you've worked out all of your baggage? It's absurd. The Gemara says otherwise. The Gemara says that Yochanan Kohen Gadol shouldn't trust himself on the last day of his life because he became an apikoidus. A man who went into the Kohen Gadol, to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Holy of Holies, many, many times. And at the last moment, he drops it. So, what do you need more? And what do we learn from that? A person should never trust himself. So I don't want to go more into it. I just mentioning over here because this concept of doing something with excitement is a good thing, and shouldn't be looked at. Well, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I would have had different children. Maybe I would have been more accepted by the world. It's all klippa. Okay, let's continue. Specifically those people who have a set time like we do in the morning to learn Torah, and they find themselves like you and I, in Bet Shemesh, in a Borough Park, in a community of other learners of Torah, the Seif, Hamoed, the Torah Machziv L'mutaf. The Rebbe says here a very important thing. The end will be that the illuminary, there is Yoni, the Or, the light, the energy, there is the source of light, which we call Ma'or. Hence the name of some organizations, Ma'or. The illuminary, the source. The Rebbe says the source of Torah, which people learned, Machzira L'mutav, will make people do tshuva. In other words, what he's alluding to here, I believe, is once you tasted the Torah is going to help you do tshuva, even if you make a left turn later in your life. It reminds me of the story, I'll say it briefly, with Rabbi Yoel, by Shpia over Shalom. Rabbi Yoel would always say over a story where I think he went to Lakewood, to a yeshiva. This is probably the 50s or 60s. And there was a student who was like the best in the yeshiva, and they had what was called chaburas, where they would learn a certain sugya topic in the Gemara, and then each week or so, another student would say a pilpul, a dissertation on that sugya. And this one particular student, Yonason, who was like the best of the yeshiva, he never wanted to attend Rabbi Yoel's Tanya Shir, but he always would speak to him before the Shir and after the Shir. And he was very bright, and Rabbi Yoel was very bright, so they really clicked. But he wouldn't walk in to hear the Shir. And Rabbi Yoel never said anything. Never said anything. He just befriended him and kept the relationship going. And one day he comes to Rabbi Yoel and he says, I want to meet the Rebbe. Rabbi Yoel was shocked. He wants to meet the Rebbe in Yechidus. Well, so naturally he went to Rabbi Chadakov and he asked Rabbi Chadakov if he can give this Litvisha Bacher an appointment. And Reb Chadakov said, yeah, he put him on the schedule. Reb Yoel did not ask him at the time why he wants to see the Rebbe. Reb Yoel was a very smart person. He didn't have to find out, Anyway, the Bacher goes into the Rebbe, and he's there a very long time, an unusually long time, like a half an hour. Very unusual for a yeshiva student to have such a long yechidus with the Rebbe. And when he comes out, the Bacherim, 70 Bacherim, hover over him, and they want to hear whether the Rebbe tell you. And he says, I'm not telling you, and I'll never come back here again. And he goes out and slams the door of 770, and he leaves. Wow. 10 years later, he's walking on Kingston Avenue. Reb Yoel's walking on the other side, and he goes over to him and he says, Reb Yoel. And Reb Yoel looks at him, and he wants to see if he recognizes him. He doesn't recognize him because he looked different. And he says, I was that student in Lakewood that never wanted to come to your shiur. He says, wow, so what are you doing here? He says, I'll tell you. He says that I had an issue that a spiritual issue that I couldn't find resolve. And I heard so much from you about the Rebbe, about Chabad, that I thought maybe the Rebbe can give me advice. So when I went into Yechidus, the Rebbe basically pinned me against the wall by proving to me why my issue wouldn't be resolved if I only study Talmud. And then the Rebbe spent time explaining how the issue would be resolved if I learned Chassidus. And the third part of the Yechidus was that the Rebbe said, and if you don't do that, A, B, C, and D will happen, like the Rebbe prophesied. And he told him, you're going to go back to the yeshiva and you're going to say a pilpul, and everyone is going to be looking to hear your chidushim, your novel insights into the Gemara, and you're from the best students. And it's going to be a bomb. It's going to be such a foolish chidush, and because your ego is so strong, because you're the best of the yeshiva, it's going to humiliate you, and the point is you're going to start losing your faith and your hope and your interest in learning, and you'll start, and the Rebbe says, hanging out on this and this corner, at this and this store, meeting this and this girls, doing this, and slowly your tzitzis are going to come off, and your yarmulke is going to come off. Mamish, the Rebbe forecasted for him what will happen if he doesn't learn Chassidus. And he did not want to learn Chassidus because he's a Litvak. He likes Reb Yoel and he respects the Rebbe, but till here. But the Rebbe cornered him intellectually. He could not answer. He understood why through only learning Gemara the issue will remain. And he understood that through Chassidus, there's a good chance it will dissipate. But he didn't want to learn Chassidus. So he was stuck. So he was so angry. So when he went out of Yechidus, he said, I don't want to ever come back here. So Rav Yoel said, so why are you back on Kingston Avenue telling me this story? 10 years later. So he said, it's because over the years, exactly what the Lubavitcher Rebbe said happened in my life. I went back and I said a pilpul and it was a bomb and my friends laughed at me and it bothered my ego so much that I started to lose my interest in learning, and slowly but surely I became non-religious, dropped it all, met a girl, luckily she was Jewish, married her, we both were not religious and all that. But as the years went on, I said to myself, and I remember I was from the best in Lakewood. So I started to feel guilty. So from time to time, I would reminisce about my years in yeshiva and my frum years. And then I passed by a shul. I think he lived actually later in Brooklyn. I passed the shul, and then I heard them learning, and it reminded me of the Gemara, which I now hated because of what I felt caused me to my downfall. But then I also passed a Hasidic shtibel, and I heard nigunim, and it was soothing for the soul. And I decided, I'm going to come to 770. I'm going to come to a Farbrengen with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Because after all, it was he who spent time with me and basically prophesied my life. And, he felt guilty. And he said like this, if I come to the Rebbe, and I'm going to come to 770, see what that does to me. When he opened the door of 770 and walked in and heard the Rebbe's, it was Purim, I think. He heard the Rebbe's voice on the loudspeaker, and the Rebbe quoted these words, Hamor the Torah, Machzira Lemutov, verbatim. The luminary of Torah will make you do tshuva, will bring you back for good. I felt like he's talking directly to me. And the fact that I once learned Torah, the Torah will make me do tshuva one day. And he said that opened up for me for the first time in years, the willingness to recheck into Frumkeit. But I wasn't 100% there yet. But I started to gravitate and say, let me get more involved. So now, it was before Shavuos, and I decided I'm going to come here, and I happened to see you, Rabbi Yoel, on Kingston Avenue. So Rabbi Yoel told him, thank you for sharing, and he said to him, the Rebbe gives out Koishel Bracha after Yom Tov, at the end, what people call Nilas Achad, when the Yom Tov is over. Go by the Rebbe with your cup and see if he recognizes you 10 years later. And then he said to Rabbi Yoel, I'm going to do that. And if he recognizes me, I'm becoming a Baal Teshuvah. And I will, if the Rebbe stops and talks to me, I'll talk to him. He went by, he put his cup up. The Rebbe said, Shalom Aleichem Reb Yankel. And he was so moved, he couldn't talk, that he just shook his head and he went further. And the rest is history. Became frum again with a family and everything else. So, Hamor Sheb the Torah, Machzira Lemutav, is very powerful. That the source of Torah, when you learn Torah, there is the Torah and there's the source of Torah, meaning God who's behind the Torah, will one day bring you back to Tshuva. So this is why when we learned these words now, it reminded me of this story. Va'alulim Yoser, let's go weiter, lispoya b'midas tovos. And these people who learned Torah are more apt to be impacted with good midas. V'tama davarhu, and the reason is, v'vishateva alilas ha'ispailus maybe l'toiv, because the nature of emotionalism and excitement is to bring good. This is the point, Avram, that the Rebbe is proving over here, that the excitement usually will lead to good rather than bad. It can lead to bad and no good, but more so it'll lead to a good side. So in other words, a person shouldn't say, I shouldn't get too excited, because if I get too excited, I'm going to end up in the wrong pastures. No, usually you won't. And the Rebbe added, especially that if you once learned the Torah, Torah is going to direct your excitement to a healthy place. So to the nefesh abamis, the animal drive, since its nature, it's apt for excitement. That's the DNA of the nefesh abamis. L'zois, therefore, when we daven in Shachris, and we say the verses of praise, Bichlal, generally speaking, Uvisboininus de Birchas Krishma, and more specifically, when we reflect and meditate on the blessings before the Shema, Bebitl HaMalachim, which consists of talking about the nullification, the subservience of the angels to Hashem, V'chayas HaKodesh, and more specifically, which group of angels displays this in the most form, in the greatest form? It is the holy angels called Chayos, Befrat, this impacts him, arouses him, and impacts him in a way that causes an inner engraving. What does this mean, Yonasim? In other words, and Yonasim, this is important. This is what the Rebbe is saying here, is the avoid of Birchas Krishma. People always ask, what am I supposed to think about when I say the blessings of Shema? Shema we know. Shema Nesher we know. Verses of praise we know. What about these blessings? The answer is talks about the angels. Why? What we're saying, and this is just in a nutshell, what we're saying is, look, the angels are our spiritual fathers. And look how they're subservient to God by bowing and lauding and praising. And if they are this way, shouldn't we, who are the offspring of these spiritual angels, do the same? So this is a meditation that's very healthy to prepare ourselves for the actual saying of Shema. That's what he says here, and that's why he calls it Chakika Pnimius. Remember what he said earlier, Yonasin. There's the Chakika Chitzonius, there's the exterior engraving, which is Lazamer Aritzim, to cut away the thorns, the branches, right? So that, because we have all kinds of shtus, so you got to chop that away so you can get to the good flowers and the good produce and all that, the good agriculture. But then when you get to the good agriculture, you have to use it properly. That's the Birchas Krishma. So, Sukkah de Zimbra, the Avodah is Lazamer Aritzim. And Birchas Krishma, the Avodah is Chakika Pnimius, which is to sow deep inside yourself the sense of humility and subservience to Hashem as we learn and see from the angels. That's what it says over here. And the Rebbe says that the nefesh abamis, being, but by nature, it's like we said before, Yoini, hits a dick, hot-blooded, it's very apt to this activity. It's in the zone. It's in the zone of excitement. So this is a great place to get your nefesh abamis Avram excited so that it joins the holy spiritual club of serving Hashem. Dehine hanefesh abamis harashosho mishmari afan. The Rebbe cites here, the previous Rebbe cites here, a Kabbalistic concept. What's the shoresh? What's the root of the nefesh abamis? It's called the excrement. Shmar is the word shmarim, ha'ofanim, of the group of angels that are called ofanim. Just as we have excrement, the angels have spiritual excrement. The famous story is the chassid is walking in downtown Moscow or Leningrad. He looks up and he sees tall buildings. And he comes from this little village. And he never saw a tall building. He saw a hut. He saw a little house. And he comes to the big city. He sees all of a sudden a tall building. And he looks up to Hashem and he says, wow, these Efanim really, how should I say this? These Efanim really had a big bowel movement. There is a small bowel movement, excuse the expression, And from that comes average, normal Gashmias, little houses. Here I see big buildings. This is a result of a big bowel movement. Of course, it's a joke. It's an insight into the concept of shmarei ofanim, the excrement of the ofanim. Guess what? The nefesh habamis, its shayrish is the shmarei ofanim. It says in Kabbalah. In other words, all of its ploys and all of its tricks and all of its schmutz originates in holiness. That's the point. You hear that? It's not shmarim. It's not excrement from evil. It's excrement, Yoni, from ofanim. And the excrement of ofanim is also holy, but it's excrement. So a big building, if you take it and say, wow, or a fancy car, or a fancy house, or lots of money, and you get all excited, then you're identifying with the excrement. And you're not realizing that it's excrement of a fanim. The point is to realize that this is excrement of a fanim. And if I realize it's excrement of a fanim, then I will use it properly to enhance God, to enhance Torah. This is a new one, Avram. You never heard this before, did you? Okay. L'zois, b'havana v'yadiyas bittul mekairoi. Listen to this, Yonason. By understanding how the angels are subservient or nullified to its source, by the nefesh habamis, realizing that all of Gashmias, all material is just but excrement, and it's really nullified to the source because it comes from there. He becomes weakened in his potency of luring the person to nonsense, and he leaves that first position of nonsense, and he becomes suitable to be a vessel to use his passion for God. So what we're learning here is a very important point, Chevra. The first thing you have to do is soften the nefesh habamis. Don't try to eliminate the nefesh habamis in the beginning because you're not going to succeed. It's too intense. What you need to do is soften the blow. How do you soften the blow? You soften the blow by saying, hey, nefesh habamis, come here. Come here, I want to talk to you. I want to have a discussion. Let's go for a walk. Let's go for a pizza. Let's go to a ball game. Now they'll say, well, what do you want? Oh, hey, just relax. Be cool. We're watching the Super Bowl now. We're eating popcorn and drinking beer. Relax. It tastes good. It's fun. And meanwhile, in between the breaks, you say, nefesh habamis, what do you want from me? Come on. You know where you come from. You're trying to make me do these silly things. You yourself are just excrement, my friend. And you're excrement of these holy guys. So be thankful that they allowed you to be excrement. And therefore, let's use your excrement, your gashmias, for God. And the nefesh habamis starts thinking, you're right. You know, my father, my mother, these angels, they could have, gone in their own way and made, as we say in Yiddish, machen Shabbos for sich. It's an expression, make their own Shabbos, go off and decide to create their own style, and they didn't. They're still bowing to God and kneeling to God and acknowledging God and lauding God. Kodesh, 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 Baruch, Kvod Hashem, Koimei, all the things we say in Birchas Krishma. Why? Because at the end of the day, they understand that they are just angels and they have a source. So if the angels do this, shouldn't we? It's like, I told you, Avram Twersky, that Rabbi Dr. Twersky, Al Shalom, his first year of his yahrzeit, he writes in one of his books that his father trained him, growing up in Milwaukee, trained him with the concept of espastnit. The word past is a Yiddish word, it means befitting. This is not befitting for you. You come from a certain family, you come from a certain lifestyle, you know what I'm saying? Come on. It doesn't fit in. Now, of course, if you use that to the point where you walk around all your life with that ego, it's no good. But initially, to vacate, to leave a bad position, a bad state, it's acceptable, as we discussed once before. So this is what the Rebbe is saying here, that the way to make the Nefesh Abamis use its excrement, its passion for Hashem, is first you have to bring it in and soften its attitude, and have it have some humility, because at the end of the day, it's excrement. So, what are you bragging with your excrement? I mean, come on, you got to be kidding. So this type of conversation, by the way, Yonason, this is all even alluded to in chapter 29 in Tanya, when the Alter Rebbe talks about this idea in different words. If you think about it, he says the same thing. He Adam Atzmai. He says the Nefesh Abamis is man. But what's the purpose? The purpose is that we use that passion for Hashem. And in this Maimer right here, he gives us a meditation and opens up for us what the various parts of davening are, so we understand what should we be doing and thinking about during Pesukei Zimra, and what should we be thinking about during Birchas Krishma. Okay, Chevra, we'll see everyone tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem. Have a great day. Bye-bye.